Welcome to this remastered version of a 2015 series called Dja Dja Wurrung Radio. This series was made possible by a community grant from the Mount Alexander Shire Council. Created for MAINfm to be aired as short 5 to 10 minute segments to highlight and celebrate local Indigenous culture past and present. The series was shortlisted for the 2016 Reconciliation Victoria Heart Awards. For ease of listening, we've edited them together into 30 to 40 minute episodes and have linked episodes by theme rather than representing the order that they were originally broadcast in. So every time you hear the didgeridoo, you'll know it's the beginning or the end of an episode. We hope you enjoy it.
You're listening to a glimpse into the history and culture of the Dja Dja Wurrung people.
Presented by Uncle Rick and Allie Hanley. In today's episode, we'll be talking to Marguritte Stephens, who's an historian. She teaches Indigenous history with Dr. Fred Carr at Federation University. And she has been studying the early colonial history of first contact between white people in Australia and the Aboriginal people through the eyes of a white man whose job it was to protect the Aboriginal people or represent them.
I've had an interest in the journal of William Thomas for some years now and transcribed that journal, a sort of 5-year process. But the journal itself covers nearly 30 years of the work of Assistant Protector William Thomas and then his work as guardian of Aboriginal people in Victoria. So it's an enormously rich source of information about Aboriginal people in that time of colonial invasion. It dates from the Protectorate starts about 3 years after the arrival of Batman and Faulkner and at Port Phillip, but it really comes out of a period of sort of philanthropic politics, evangelical philanthropic politics in Britain, sort of initiated by the same people who fought the anti-slavery campaigns. And Thomas, while he's paternalistic and he's quite cruel in some ways, it's still a time in which there are real connections between Aboriginal people and settlers. Some good, some bad connections, but close connections nevertheless. Part of his role was as a magistrate. Commissioned as magistrates, they were able to arrest people, they were able to investigate massacres, and Thomas was quite determined to do that, so that the fact of the government having a legal eye on settlers, I think probably had limited the violence. Now, it was a violent frontier, but it could have been worse. I think the general consensus is that while Aboriginal people died in huge numbers, huge proportion, that more of the deaths were due to disease than they were to actual violence on the frontier. In central Victoria, the violence there's huge levels of violence out in Gippsland, around Portland Bay, up on the Murray at a later point. But that central part where the protectors were active, there's some restraint on violence. It's relative, and it's a...
Of course, we've got Protector Parker here, Edward Stone Parker, who played a big role in the Dja Dja Wurrung people and stuff. So it seems that Parker and Thomas were quite, like you say, active and stuff in helping the Aboriginal people. Would you say that?
Yes, I think, look, how do we talk about these things? It is an enormously... It's a terrible process of colonisation. It's a terrible process of people's land, country being taken. There's enormous impact, and yet can you say it could have been worse? It was terrible, but it could have been worse. It's I hesitate to say that, and yet I think that's possibly the truth.
The Aboriginal people, I don't think, will ever forget of what's happened, if you understand. Even into the future, I mean, the future generations, we can never forget what's actually happened, that there was atrocities happening, and you know, the land was taken, the culture was taken, the language was taken, and all that. Some of the missionaries seemed quite cruel. Like, they wouldn't let them speak the language, they wouldn't let them hunt traditionally. They burnt their spears and all that. So it is a fine line to talk about sometimes.
As a person of European descent, we Europeans very easily forgot about it. It was in our interest to forget about it, not in yours. Doing this work has sort of given me a sense of that deeper history, but also the current continuing connections that people have to land, that we European-related people need to remember. It's I have always felt sort of unsure about doing this work, and yet I found it, for me, it's been a sort of a place of I think quite deep learning about what happened here and our place in that. The supreme value of Thomas's material is that it's a daily journal, and he records all sorts of little details that don't get into the quarterly reports and the annual reports. That's the sort of that level of daily detail is always stripped out for those formal reports, but in the journal, which was a layered thing, a sort of a first writing, a second cleaning up, a third formal report. But if you go back into the first versions of it, you get little details, like the children playing with tops. We learn things about children, Thomas having sort of wooden letters for them to read. One lovely piece that I love is with him negotiating with people about, with the men essentially of the Woiwurrung, whether they will come into the church altogether. The men say they can't sit in that space with the women, and what they negotiate is that they will build a second door, and so the women can come in one door, the men in the other. It's that sort of little detail, little details like that that are scattered all through it. But so it gets right to that sort of daily lived experience. And conversations are recorded. A woman down in Western Port saying, "This is my country," and pointing out, "This is my country." No question about that. And Thomas going on walks with people across Western Port. He went up the Plenty River with people, and they at one point showed him what I think must have been like a sacred board that was hidden away. And then there's at that point there's the crossing into Taungurung territory, and the description of the mountains and the description of people walking towards him. He'd come up the Plenty River with the Woiwurrung people, and he meets the Taungurung people coming, and it's sort of descriptions of that. It's this sort of detail that makes them so rich. Can I just say lastly that the journals were published by the Victorian Aboriginal Corporation for Language, and and that they can be bought from VACL in Melbourne.
Marguritte Stephens there, historian from Federation University, having a chat to us about her research and what it's revealed to her over the many years that she's been doing it. All right, Rick, today is Sorry Day. So can you tell us a little bit about Sorry Day and what it means?
Yep, certainly. I can try. In a nutshell, basically, it's a celebration type day. The Australian government finally recognised and admitted that the stolen generation, the taking of Indigenous kids, actually happened. So that's recognised. So,
but it wasn't recognised for a very long time, was it? And it took a report from the Australian Human Rights Commission called Bringing Them Home to bring it home to Australia, that there was such a thing as basically a generation of children stolen from Aboriginal communities, and the damage that caused.
More than a generation, mate.
Many generations.
From, the mid-1800s to mid-1900s.
So, I mean, the reason why generations of children were stolen was, it seems to be the idea that people at the time, the white folk who were in power here, really felt like purebred Aboriginal race was just going to die out, and they didn't seem upset by that. They were quite happy for that to happen, because then Australia really would be theirs.
Yep.
And
the White Australia policy.
Yeah, but what they were doing was taking any children of mixed blood, so any children who had some kind of European or ethnically Caucasian breeding, and removing them from their home and their community and their Aboriginal heritage.
And they were putting them into reserves and stations and schools and things.
And missions and refusing to let them speak language or learn or remember any of their cultural heritage of their Aboriginal side. Yep,
exactly. And a funny thing is, Allie, here I've got a little quote thing, and it says the boys were actually called inmates.
Yeah, they weren't referred to as students or wards of the state. They were called inmates.
Yeah.
Oh, that's terrible. Yeah. It's sort of shows the underlying expectations and prejudice that were there right from the start. It is really interesting because they were removed for their own good, and the justification was very often that these children were being neglected and they didn't have a good quality of life with their mothers or their families.
Parents and families and stuff, that's right.
So there was a guy in South Australia, for example, who, William Garnett South, he lobbied for the power to remove Aboriginal children without a court hearing. He wanted to be able to take them without going through court each time.
Yep.
Because the court sometimes refused to accept that the children were actually neglected or destitute. I think that's quite telling, isn't it?
Yep.
He actually just wanted to take them all, regardless of what their actual conditions were.
Yep.
And the irony, again, is that they were often taken to institutions, and these missions or government institutions or children's home were often really poor, and the resources were so insufficient that the children weren't adequately clothed, fed or sheltered anyway.
Exactly, so they probably weren't that better off anyway.
They were definitely not better off. And there's a lot of reports of physical and sexual abuse, all kinds of abuse happening.
And we've got the good examples of that with the Rabbit Proof Fence movie.
Yeah.
Some time ago, that was actually part of the stolen generation thing going on. They tried to take the kids from their parents.
Yeah.
And they actually walked across Central Australia some 1,600 k's along the Rabbit Proof Fence to get home.
Yeah, that's right. It's an amazing story, isn't it? And a true story.
It is an amazing story.
Yeah. And I think what it's left is all of these people who really don't have a sense of who their family is, what their culture is. They don't fit in white society, especially back then, because you can't hide the colour of your skin.
And they're not sure about the Indigenous communities, whether they'll accept them or not.
Yeah, that's right.
Sort of floating around, trapped in between two worlds and stuff.
Yeah, so the Bringing Them Home report was amazingly influential, and the first National Sorry Day happened a year after that report was released, so that happened in 98 on the 26th of May, and we've had a National Sorry Day ever since.
Yep.
And there's been a National Sorry Day committee, and it sort of is a focus point for people to just recognise the damages that have been done.
Yeah.
And figure out ways to make amends. And for a very, very long time, our government refused to make amends. John Howard made a very strong point of that for the time he was in Parliament.
Yeah.
And then pretty much on one of the first acts Kevin Rudd did in his term as Prime Minister, and I have to say, one of the most touching, it made me actually feel patriotic about my country for the first time in a very long time, was when he gave that sorry speech.
Yeah, it was quite a good speech on his behalf. We've had Sorry Day celebrations here in Castlemaine for the last couple of years, and the one today was up at the secondary college.
Yep.
With the students, and the students playing didgeridoos and stuff.
Yep, so that was first thing this morning.
Yeah, yep.
And what else is going on?
Well, then it's Reconciliation Week from Friday onwards. So we've got a whole lot of activities going on all week. We've got a photographic display in the library foyer, which has been in the market building a few times, but we've got the smaller area this year.
So it's the Fee Broadway Theatre foyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got storytelling for some kindergarten kids. We've got some sharing the teachings with some primary school kids. We've got an Indigenous history walk through the CBD of Castlemaine. There's a few little things that happened in the 1800s around town here.
Yep.
And we've got a mural up on the top end of town, which we'll be launching next week.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll be able to have a chat to the artist for this segment.
Yep.
And let you know all about it. So they're all really good things. And there's one more thing that is interesting, I think, as a development on Sorry Day. The Sorry Day Committee officially decided to rename it the National Day of Healing in 2005. And you recently made a decision about what happens to the flag.
Yeah. Well, on past occasions, people lower the flag to half-mast and stuff, and for the whole time we've thought that it should actually be a celebration that the Australian government has acknowledged that those things happen. So we like to fly the flag loud and proud and celebrate the occasion, not mourn it, as said, when lowering the flag to half-mast and stuff. So on one or two buildings you'll see the flag flying at full mast.
Yeah, that's great. And I guess, the point with having a national apology by our Prime Minister for past wrongs done by the government, that's really important. But Reconciliation Week is really
also
saying
important as well.
There's so much more to go. We still have so much more to go. Aboriginal people still have much lower life expectancy. There's so many health problems. There's, all sorts of issues.
All sorts of healing things going on.
Yeah, there's a lot that still needs to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you have a chance, get along to the Castlemaine Library and check it out. And Vixay runs the display there most years, and he's got amazing books and maps and really, really interesting stuff. It's a historical display and all sorts of things. All right, well, we've got a song we'll play on this day, Sorry Day. What are we going to play, Rick?
We'll play one of our favourite fellas, of course, Archie Roach. They took the children away.
This story's right, this story's true. I would not tell lies to you, like the promise said they did not keep, and how they fenced us in like sheep. Said to us, come take their hand, set us up on mission land, told us to read, to write and pray. Then they took the children away, took the children away, the children away. Snatched from their mother's breast, said this is for the best, took them away.
Today we're hearing from Aunty Julie McHale, who spoke at the International Women's Day breakfast held in the Castlemaine Botanical Gardens at the Tea Rooms and hosted by Mount Alexander Shire Council. She was awarded Citizen of the Year earlier this year on Australia Day. Here she talks about the particular position of Aboriginal women.
I believe reconciliation is the only way to move forward. I believe that more and more Australians are now embracing our culture and respecting us for who we are, what has happened to us, and the strength we have to keep our beliefs alive. As with any group, there are still those who have stereotypical views, but in the last 10 years, through the work done by Uncle Brian, Uncle Rick, Auntie Kath, and many other Aboriginal people, including myself, and the support of other Australians, especially Vixay, the attitudes are changing. When I was nominated for the Citizen of the Year, I was initially delighted, then went through the decision of whether I should receive this award on Australia Day, also called Survival Day and Invasion Day. Eventually I realised that although the date is unfortunate, every person who lives in Australia has the right to celebrate and to be proud and to respect each other. When I thought about refusing, I thought, what would this achieve? By being very proud of receiving the award, I saw this as a step towards reconciliation. I have received so many genuine messages of support, and I have not received any negative comments from anyone. This, to me, is reconciliation. People seeing that we can achieve much if we are acknowledged as being capable and allowed to do things our way. I know Uncle Rick and the rest of the Aboriginal community of the Mount Alexander Shire are proud of me, but also feel proud of their role in supporting me and each other in the work we do. Vic and Rick, and before them Uncle Brian, worked tirelessly to bring about trust and respect. Walking down the street and seeing the flags flying, seeing murals, seeing signage and smiles and nods is so pleasing. This hasn't always been the case, believe me. What does it mean to be an Aboriginal woman in today's society? Being an Aboriginal woman in today's society is not always an easy job. Traditionally, men and women had very specific roles. In many cases, the roles of the men were taken away from them with the arrival of others. No more hunting, no more fighting to protect your family because you always lost. Women, however, still had their roles: children, matriarch, feeding, caring and keeping the family together. In many communities, this is unbelievably hard. However, our women are very strong. In most communities, you'll find that it is the women who are the leaders, who make the laws and enforce them, who find themselves as the negotiators and, of course, the ones who are blamed when things go wrong. Too many of our young girls are getting pregnant, not looking for work, not mixing with or even knowing their mob, not believing they have the right to a happy and successful life. Do you know that percentage-wise there are more Aboriginal children living in out-of-home care than there has ever been before? That includes the stolen generations. It is the role of the aunties to fix this. In this Shire, Kath has worked so hard getting work for our girls at the hospital, the bank, Murnong Mamas, the Indigenous Foods Project and Sisters Dreaming, to name a few. We have women's business yarns, and we have found that inviting other interested Australian women to these has also worked so well. The girls in our community know us. They know that they can come to us with their problems and that we will go to them if we perceive there is an issue. Sometimes it involves yarning up, shaming, calling on family, getting grumpy, crying with them and guiding them along another path, or simply just being there. Too often, schools, employers and peers within our communities have no comprehension of the life that these girls live. It is our role to teach them. Our work in schools is essential. Children are usually accepting. Sometimes their families force their racist views onto them, but we are finding more and more that the children are challenging these views. Several schools, kindergartens and childcare centres in our Shire can be proud of what they are doing. Most of the children in the district know the teachings and the traditions of our mob. There are some that need to catch up. The Aboriginal children in these schools are feeling safer and stronger. They are proudly saying they are Aboriginal. They are learning how to live in two worlds. Eventually it would be wonderful if it was one world. Young Aboriginal women in today's society in many cases have privileges that the elders never had. Most attend schools, are shown paths that they could follow and are supported in their efforts. Overall, young Aboriginal women in many places have opportunities that their elders never had. However, in saying this, I also acknowledge that many Aboriginal girls and women have disadvantages that are real and are significant, especially compared with other Australians. Most Aboriginal girls and women have experienced racism, often covert or institutional racism, where they are made to feel as though they are inferior. Sometimes this is patronising. Kath, Dakota and I have been asked why would we identify as Aboriginal women? We could get away with being white. No longer should we be looked at as the poor little Aborigines. We are proving over and over again that we are intelligent, proud, strong and willing to stand up for ourselves and others in our community. Yes, I am proud to be an Aboriginal woman, as I know these children and the other women are as well. And with our sisters and aunties and you women, we will continue to thrive. White fella books usually talk about the role of men because it was mainly men writing the books. And there is no way the women are going to talk to those gubbers about our business. Now, however, you see many books written by Aboriginal women. I was planning to bring some in with me but forgot. Our women are strong and we want to keep our culture alive. We want our children to know and embrace their culture and be proud to be women, proud to be sisters. Helping young Aboriginal women retain their identity is essential. Look at the girls who dance for you today. They are who we're talking about. We don't want them to be exposed to what most of their elders and parents have been exposed to. They need to be nurtured and helped to learn how to remain true to their culture in this Western society that we live in. These girls will stand up for themselves. They are being embraced by their culture. Thank you.
That was Aunty Julie McHale speaking earlier this week at the International Women's Day breakfast in Castlemaine.
You're listening to a glimpse into the history and culture of the Dja Dja Wurrung people.
Presented by Uncle Rick Nelson and Allie Hanley.